Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. For those of you who may not know me, I'm Jorge Sanchez. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm the Program Director of Diversity and Inclusion at 4Health Consulting, as well as a proud member of our UMass Chan Diversity Inclusion Office. So I'd really like to welcome all of you to our breakout session for this year's Diversity Summit, entitled Creating a Sense of Belonging in the Workplace. You have noticed that we are recording the session. For those who are unable to attend today, who'll be able to participate and receive the video later on. And you will also notice that we have the closed captioning enabled. In case you are in need of that, you can press the button at the bottom of your screen. Throughout the session, we're going to ask that you submit your questions via the chat feature. Our moderator will certainly share with our panelists the questions, and we'll answer as many of those throughout the session and certainly at the end of the presentation as well. To kick things off, we're really excited to be part of the Diversity Summit this year. Not only because all of us at 4Health Consulting really recognize that cultivating a sense of belonging in the workplace is a central component to our commitment to DEI, but also really acknowledging the fact and the need for this work to be intentional. Given our business model, we are primarily a remote working environment. So we really needed to be critical and intentional about this work. And so much so that we actually included the B for belonging in diversity, equity, and inclusion as part of our strategic plan pillar, in which it really helps to solidify a framework for our strategic initiatives moving forward. So again, thank you. We're excited about the stories and experiences you'll hear and how we're advancing this work moving forward. So a bit about today in our agenda. We'll start off with a bit of an introduction about who we are, our mission at 4Health Consulting, talk a little bit about why we're sharing what we learned about belonging, particularly during our rebrand implementation, and why it's a strategic priority for us. Through our panel of leadership and members of our team, we're going to hear a bunch about different perspectives about what belonging means to them, as well as to us at 4Health Consulting. So you'll see these panelists in a bit. Really helping to frame the conversation. We're looking to address some of these key questions throughout today's session. So one being, what is a sense of belonging in the workplace? When we think about a sense of belonging, we understand that that really is the feeling of acceptance, inclusion, value, security, and support. And that really is the fundamental drive to form and maintain lasting, positive, significant relationships and connections with one another. And when we think about that in the workplace, these relationships really can be extended to the organization as a whole, our common values, our core principles, and frankly, the work that we do itself. Secondly, why is it important for individuals and organizations? We also recognize that when employees do feel like they belong, they're more engaged, motivated, and committed to their work. And frankly, they're also more likely to stay with an organization and contributes to success. And lastly, why did 4Health Consulting implement strategies to achieve a sense of belonging? And I think for that answer, I'm going to hand it over to Katie Mick, our Associate Executive Vice Chancellor for Strategy and our Chief of Staff. Katie?
Thank you so much, Jorge. First, though, before I answer that question, let me tell the folks that are here today a little bit more about who we are at 4Health Consulting. I don't want to assume that everyone in the participation box are members of 4Health Consulting. So we are the consulting and healthcare operations divisions of UMass Chan Medical School. We contribute significant revenue margin to advance the school's vision and mission. We do this by partnering with purposeful organizations, including public and private health and human service organizations and Medicaid programs. In Massachusetts mostly, however, we are also have book of business in 25 other states with a focus on improving the healthcare experience, making it more equitable, effective, and accessible. And as part of UMass Chan, we are able to leverage the world-class expertise and decades of experience to develop innovative solutions that transform every aspect of the health and human services system, from payment and financing to clinical practice and information management. But what's most important to us is that we believe in the power of a shared purpose, and that together, all of us, staff, partners, we can make healthcare better. So going back to Jorge's question, how did 4Health Consulting, formerly known as Commonwealth Medicine, seize the opportunity to emphasize focusing or intentionally focusing on creating a sense of belonging during our brand implementation process? Aligned with Impact 2025 and the actionable commitments that have been made and will continue to be made in diversity, equity, and inclusion, we've developed internal strategies that were central to our newly articulated vision and mission, which prioritizing cultivating a sense of climate and culture that results in a sense of belonging and appreciation for both the uniqueness of the individual and the diversity of our team. Leading with these values was central from the beginning of our brand implementation process, and affirmed again last year when we initiated the pilot of our Diversity Equity Action Plan in lockstep with leadership from the DIO and stewarded by Jorge here today. And we knew then, and we know now, that an internal focus and an ongoing commitment to that internal focus is essential for creating a positive and productive work and learning environment for everyone. Ultimately, we decided to add the B for belonging to our DEI acronym to further articulate this ongoing work and commitment, and to make DEIB a standalone pillar of our strategic plan starting this year. Previously, much like the Impact 2025 plan, DEI was a foundation upon which our pillars were built. And through the work that we were able to do over this past year through our DEEP process, really understood that establishing this as a pillar, this will allow us to ensure that it is visible and driving and sustainable force that will help us achieve our service excellence and growth plans and fulfill our operational priorities and strategic initiatives across all the organization. You can switch, thanks. And everything starts and ends with our people. Our over 1,100 employees are really the true driving force of our shared success and are steering our future direction. So first, we know that engaging staff in the substantial change of this rebranding was essential to its success and its full and effective implementation. Involvement leading up to the announcement of our new brand name and in crafting and implementing our core messaging and principles was key to our success at every level. During the brand implementation, members of our workforce from all levels across the organization were involved in work groups and feedback sessions to craft our brand identity from the front lines up. Last year, this time, almost 1,000 employees participated in more than 50 facilitated core principle workshops to really talk through, correlate how our daily work really connects in meaningful ways and in day-to-day ways with our articulated core principles, which feed what our mission is, which is then supporting our aspirational vision. We needed staff to champion this change and be a part of it, so that investing in a new brand would also enable all of us to share the news and be able to speak about who we are and what we do with a unified definition of purpose. After participating in the workshop, here are some examples of how our team were able to describe their work as it relates to our core principles. So just sharing some of the feedback that was multiple for each of our core principles. The first being that we're all in. And to our team, that means we work collaboratively with other organizations that share similar goals. Keeping it real means that we think of client challenges as something that could and can and do impact any of us. Innovating with experience means that we keep up with best practices, industry standards, and technology to stay competitive, and that we leverage our cross-organizational subject matter expertise, both within for health consulting and across the medical school at large. We are on a mission means that we always have a common goal, and we are always striving to make things better, finding solutions together with our team and our partners. And finally, better means all of us. This is a heart and soul of what we've continued to say in every place that we are. We want to ensure and will ensure that our work reflects the many diverse voices and recognize that meeting diverse wants, experiences, and needs are fundamental to making the healthcare experience better. This is not one party's responsibility. Better truly does mean all of us, and in order to get to all of us, we have to be incredibly intentional and mindful to ensure that there is space and place for those unique individual voices, perspectives, lived experiences. So now I'm super duper happy to turn over and introduce our panel. I am very honored to introduce these folks who have spent a lot of time really reflecting and thinking about the themes here. They will each be speaking about different ways we have leveraged our branding efforts to advance our strategic plan, affirm our core principles, and continue to foster a more inclusive workplace that advances our shared mission to improve the healthcare experience and advance belonging together. First, we have Lisa Colombo, our Executive Vice Chancellor. Hello, Lisa.
Hello, everyone.
Kim Cristoforo is a Project Management Coordinator and member of our Process Improvement and Project Management team. She has been also one of our brand ambassadors and now employee advisors for strategic plan initiatives. Maria Isaacs, a tremendous architect in all of this work as our strategic marketing manager. Carla Kath, another tremendous architect managing the internal communications and employee engagement around this work. And Tanya Skypeck, who is a communications and program development manager for the state supplement program in Massachusetts and one of our brand ambassadors. And just truly, it's been a pleasure to get to know Tanya through this process. So thank you everyone for taking the time today. So Lisa, I'm going to start with you. Can you share a little bit about our brand journey and the history behind developing our brand strategy?
I would be delighted to. Thank you, Katie, and hello, everyone. And I want to just also thank the audience for taking the time out to spend it with us and to hear about our journey, which we're really proud of and very excited about. So let me just start by answering the question that Katie just asked. 4Health Consulting, as Katie mentioned earlier in her remarks, has a very unique place in the ecosystem of the medical school. And so for us, maintaining a solid and healthy business, which is going to help to maintain and sustain the margin that we generate for the school, is essential for all of us so that we can advance together and achieve our mission, both to serve the underserved populations, but also to support the healthcare research and medical education mission of the school. And to that end, we recognize that ensuring that we had a sustainable pipeline of business so we could continue to grow and be healthy was going to be important to our overall organizational well-being. So we, when I joined the organization back in 2018, one of the first things that we did was to develop our strategic plan. And it was perfect timing because the chancellor had just completed the work on his Impact 2025 plan. And so we took obviously that plan and cascaded it down to our work and looked for ways in which we could develop a plan that would support the things that I just talked about. And sustainable growth became a prominent pillar. We realized that in order to experience that purposeful growth, that we needed to be sure that we were positioning ourselves appropriately in the marketplace amongst the other competition that we have to win the business that we had the right to win. So our identity in that marketplace became the focus of our discussion. Being identified in the right place as a healthcare consultancy in a market that has, as you probably know, many other healthcare consultants that are perfectly capable and qualified to do some work that similar work that we do, made it important for us to establish ourselves within that field where we had a wheelhouse. And that's what really prompted our journey to start looking at our brand.
And thank you for that, Lisa. And one of the things that you have spoken a lot about in other forums is our growth strategy and the need for us to really not only survive but thrive and continue to be looking at our growth. Can you tell us a little bit about how our growth strategy aligns with the call for a new brand?
Sure. So as we thought about what might hinder our growth, because that's, we have a very solid, book of business. You mentioned it earlier in your remarks, Katie. We do a lot of work within Massachusetts, obviously with our own state government, but we have work in 25 other states. But it became obvious to us that our name, Commonwealth Medicine, didn't necessarily position us effectively amongst the competitors in our field to win the business that we should win. It didn't clarify our relationship with the medical school. In fact, how we position our relationship with the school, we knew strengthened our ability to create a brand. And so a clear articulation of that relationship was also important as we were thinking about this. For example, if we're trying to win business in another state like Idaho in the middle of the country, we want to compel them to select a consultancy that's tied to our medical school because of the value that being part of the medical school brings with respect to the kind of outcomes that we can deliver them. Making yourself stand out in the marketplace is something that organizations like ours are constantly thinking about. And we've come to understand that how we communicate our purpose and our value is what differentiates us in the market. And our name, Commonwealth Medicine, didn't do any of that. It didn't communicate who we were. It certainly didn't communicate what we do, why it matters, and more importantly, it didn't communicate the value that we bring to our partners. I think I've told the story over and over again. When I first joined the organization, and I told them I worked for Commonwealth Medicine at UMass Medical School because it was before the Chan name. People were like, "Oh, do you work for a physician practice?" They couldn't quite figure it out. So I knew we had a problem. And even internally, we had trouble sort of having one voice to describe who we were and what we did. So in our state where, we're called the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, we're often confused with other health or human service organizations that have Commonwealth in their name. And I'm sure lots of people in the audience can think of those names of those organizations. And it definitely made it hard for us to communicate what we were for. And people almost never called us Commonwealth Medicine. They used to shorten it to just Commonwealth, or sometimes it was ComMed, which only made that confusion worse. So it was pretty easy to come to the conclusion that our name didn't position us to expand outside of Massachusetts, which was one of our strategic goals. We knew that we had a really strong foothold in Massachusetts. We have a reputation here. And while we had business in those other states, it was pretty shallow. We only sold 1 or 2 products in those other states. And making sure that we developed a brand identity that communicated what we do was really critical, especially outside of Massachusetts. At the same time, while we're part of a system within a system, so the medical school is an entity within the University of Massachusetts, we had to get alignment and consensus not only from our own organization inside of 4Health, we had to get consensus within the medical school, and then we also had to get consensus at the university at large. And we knew it would be important to leverage the strength of our association with the UMass Chan brand while clearly expressing our unique capabilities that align with our core business offerings. We needed to be able to communicate that we own a specific area of the market by focusing on the solutions that provide values to our partners. And probably the most impactful part of that work in our rebranding campaign was the opportunity for us to dig deep into the motivation and the purpose of the work that we do. And that led us to a really deep understanding of our connection to each other. All of us come to this work because we have mission-driven attitudes, and our connection to the larger school community. And it paved the way for us to get the really outstanding outcome that we got. And in doing so, I really believe that we strengthened our community within 4Health Consulting and within the medical school.
I muted myself. I apologize. So Lisa, this work has been all encompassing. What has this meant to our organization, if you could speak to this a little bit, externally as well as internally?
Well, to start, we knew this wasn't something we could do on our own. We probably could have repainted the surface and redid the website and stuff like that. We might have even been able to come up with a catchy new name. But in order to develop a true brand strategy and a roadmap for how we were going to connect with each other and our clients, we knew we needed some help. So we did engage a firm that was very like-minded, another mission-driven agency with expertise in brand positioning. And this partner took the time to really get under the hood of the organization and to understand who we were. And one of the critical stages, which was at the beginning of this project, was reviewing our essence, what we call our true north. We stopped to analyze our mission and our vision within the context of healthcare, which led us to propose some very powerful changes in our language and to simplify the messaging and turn it into something more real and authentic that was more of a reflection of our aspirations and how we wanted to achieve them. And that led us to be able to develop a more effective communication pattern for the reason that we exist as an organization. Also, I would say that we developed and added earlier in your presentation when you were talking about who we are, Katie, you mentioned the 5 core principles that we added to our mission and vision during this exercise. And those really helped to sort of tie everything together in a really nice package and put into action and connect more meaningfully with our mission. It's what helps us to make our mission more tangible and practical in each day. And we do it almost sort of automatically now. We use those core principles in our daily language, and it's really it's become very much part of who we are. And today we have a name that much more accurately reflects what we are for, and that all happened through this process that we've undertaken. We've engaged the whole 4Health community, which was really what was special about this process. The executive team and I didn't just work with a consultant off in a corner to develop this whole thing. We started from the ground up through use of focus groups and communication and connecting with each other, intentionally during this process, so that we really felt like at the end of this, when we announced our name, there was this collective energy that the organization had, which has really inspired all of us to continue to live our mission.
Thanks, Lisa. Really appreciate that. I'd like to turn now just to Maria Isaacs and Carly Kath in their marketing and communications role. Would each of you be able to share how we are sustaining and growing this new approach to our brand identity internally, and Maria, from the market strategy work that you are doing, which crosses both internal and external?
Thank you, Katie. Well, the simple answer is that our brand core messaging permeates everything that we do now, right? Like from structuring meetings, new content development, but also to our approaches and actions that we tied back to those principles that Lisa and you touched base. We aligned our brand strategy with our core business lines, and that is it's a very foundational part that we defined a new set of solutions that provide a real answer to our partners: better access, better knowledge, and better performance. This reorganization aligns with our client needs and the opportunities we have identified for growth and margin generating work. I truly believe that we have created a sense of belonging here, aligning also our organization structure with our strategic planning priorities, including our brand strategy and developing and deploying expertise to the healthcare and human service sectors that are where we are and they need us the most. Right now, an example that I can give you, and it's a key aspect of where we are having a very strong impact, is when we are attending conferences and events. We are able now to articulate clearly and straight to the added value of who we are, what we do, why it matters. Things that are reflected as well in our social media that actually I take the opportunity right now to ask you to visit, follow, and react to our content. I will pass this into Carla, who can share some of our internal key endeavors.
Thank you so much, Maria. I am happy to be here to share about our brand ambassador program, which now almost has 40 plus members of our organization representing all business units and all levels of the organization. And all of these individuals were engaged leading up to our brand launch at the beginning of this year, and then also continue to play a key role as brand liaisons, sometimes referred to as cheerleaders, during and after our launch, to really make sure that our brand resources and all of our new assets were shared and implemented across the organization. Today we meet monthly, and we have an active forum for ongoing communication and information sharing. We really try to empower our staff to ask questions to our brand ambassadors, and for brand ambassadors to be prepared to answer those questions for their teams and to provide the most current information for employee engagement. We actually have 2 of our brand ambassadors serving on this panel today, so that just really shows how engaged they are in this work. Kim and Tanya are here with us today as brand ambassadors and also sharing about their other roles within the organization. But their engagement in our brand implementation has just really been a big part of the success that we have achieved together. We also began a storytelling initiative for health consulting, and we call it For Health Consulting in the Community. And that's really centered around how our team is living our mission, both at work and through our work, but then also outside of our work in the community. And that's communities across the United States. And this initiative allows us to showcase how we're living our core principles, the 5 core principles that you heard about previously, and also focuses on highlighting staff across our organization so that they can see themselves in our core principles and in our work. So now, like Lisa mentioned, there's just a different energy across our organization with both of these initiatives after brand launch. Our work is really a sense of pride for everyone on our team. And now we have a better way to talk about that with our new brand messaging. And it's really creating this authentic sense of belonging for everyone.
Thank you, Carla. And thank you so much, Maria. Again, this work, your contributions and leadership, very, very central to this work. And it's an ongoing commitment. This wasn't just an initiative. This is now a new way of being. And I really appreciate, Carla, you pointing out Kim and Tanya's role, because it's a lovely segue, because I'd like to turn to the 2 of you now. Kim, you have been involved in this work in many different ways at different points in time. How did the strategic planning and the branding process come together to affect the way you thought about the way 4Health works?
Thanks, Katie. So I've been connected with our organization's rebranding efforts since the early days of the Solidify and Communicate Branding Strategic Plan Work Group, which began back in early 2020. And at that time, our employee-led work group set forth goals to ensure all employees were informed and felt enabled and equipped to overcome any barriers that might arise as a result of our changing brand identity. That branding work group remained invested into the employee-related initiatives of our rebranding, and those initiatives were really informed by the branding process at that leadership level. My role with our organization rebranding evolved from employee-led work group coordinator support to then project managing the large-scale initiatives driven by our executive leadership team. And one thing remained certain across all of that work being done. That's that our employees are highly valued and critical contributors to the work that we do to serve our community and are essentially the foundation of 4Health Consulting. So with this in mind, the rebranding efforts were driven by the need to ensure our employees were fully included, engaged, and represented at all levels of the organization. And this resulted in a true sense of belonging. The work that's done at the leadership level informed the work of our employee-led work group, and a robust brand ambassador program was implemented to achieve the goal of connecting our employees to this new brand. Via that employee ambassador program, employees were informed by their peer brand ambassadors in a relatable way, and that helped really to better understand what 4Health stands for. The brand ambassador program, I could say, really provided employees with an opportunity to connect and align with our new brand and fostered a sense of community and belonging. Sharing our core messaging, values, and new visual identity at that peer-to-peer ambassador level offered a supportable, relatable, and approachable gateway to our new brand. And from my perspective, the initiative really came full circle, not only focusing on revitalizing external perceptions of who we are at 4Health, but also prioritizing internal engagement to ensure that employees felt connected and valued.
Thanks, Kim. I really appreciate you sharing your perspective and experience. And absolutely, the 40 plus brand ambassadors have been doing real roll up your sleeve type of work, and it has certainly been a great community building exercise as well. Tanya, you too have been engaged in this work in many different ways. I was hoping that you could share your experience and how employees make an impact and live our brand, serving as ambassadors and champions for our mission in the real world.
I think that's a great question, Katie. And I think we can all think of examples of people we work with who represent our brand and our mission out there in the real world. And I want to say first, a thank you to Kim. I got to know Kim through one of the strategic plan work groups that I was on, and she was foundational in helping our work to move forward. So I appreciate her work on that. And she talked about just the sense of belonging that came from that whole strategic plan rebranding process, and how much it engaged staff at all levels. And I felt that. I felt that sense of my input being really requested and valued. So I showed up for all of the surveys and the what did we call them? Roundtable discussions and every opportunity that I had, because I felt like if my input was being asked for from my employer, I wasn't going to ignore that. So it was a good experience getting to know colleagues who I wouldn't have interacted with in another context, like Kim. And it really enriched my sense of belonging to this institution, and connected to our new name and to our new brand and that whole identity. So again, thank you to Kim for her part in that. And then as to the question about how staff are champions for our mission in the real world, one of my roles in my unit is the training coordinator. So as that role, I get to meet people who are coming on board with employment with UMass, and I get to ask them, because I'm always curious, what attracted them to want to work here. And what I most often find is that my new colleague has some previous personal or professional connection to that population that we serve. So what they're looking for in coming to 4Health is a place that will be a good fit for that mission, the values that they have, and their talents, and just an expression of those talents in a way that will serve people that they care about. So what this tells me is that my colleagues already embody this mission of 4Health before they even get here. And it also means that this brand, this 4Health concept and name and everything really reflects who we are, not just what we do in the workplace. but who we are and what we value as the individuals who work here. And I see that in my work all the time. In my unit, we're a cash benefit program, and we are always aware and sensitive to the fact that there is an individual who relies on that benefit, a person with a history, with their own individual situation behind the data that we see on the screen, behind those payments going out. And we never lose sight of that people focus. So when we're making a policy decision, we're talking about what the impact will be to our clients, and really striving to place as little burden on them as possible. We're also sensitive to, how we're using the Commonwealth's money and resources in a way that will be respectful to all of those who are a part of this community. So we are for their health and well-being. And even though it's a cash benefit program and not specifically related to healthcare, it's still a benefit that these people rely on for their well-being. And we never lose sight of that. And that permeates from the management level and all the way down to the individuals on the phone with the clients. So that's just one example of how we're doing this in our professional life. And then, Carla mentioned the storytelling of individuals who work for 4Health, who are making a real impact in their community. And she's got some great resources of other individuals who are worth reading about. For myself, the person who comes to mind is a colleague who passed away unexpectedly about a year ago. And she had a real passion for cooking. She was really good at it and loved to be able to share her love for others through preparing meals for them. So she channeled that into service to others in her community. So for many years, she was a volunteer at a food pantry in her area. So it wasn't just a can of beans on a shelf. She would prepare huge batches of food and package it all up into family-sized portions so that people who were experiencing food insecurity could come and get a well-balanced, healthy, home-cooked, made with love meal to take home and have something really hearty and delicious to eat. And it gave her a lot of joy to share her time, talent, and treasure in this way. And so she was for finding a solution to the health and well-being of those individuals in her community who were experiencing food insecurity. And that was long before we had this new brand name. So it just goes to show that our brand really reflects the kind of people who work here, and there's a natural connection to that identity and to that mission.
Thank you, Tanya, for sharing your powerful words and yourself with us here today. I truly appreciate it. I'm sure we're going to have some additional questions at the end of the panel discussion. Please submit these into the chat. We'll be monitoring those as we go. But before we open the conversation up, I would just want to turn back to Lisa for a minute. Lisa, if you could just tell us a little bit about where is 4Health now and how are we continuing to change the way that we do business overall?
There's so much to talk about with that question.
Just the highlights, my friend.
I'll try to keep it brief, but I first want to say thank you to the folks who just spoke, and especially Kim and Tanya, who, you see the commercials where it's a paid actor. These are not paid actors. These people are actually doing this work. They are their authentic selves, sharing their personal experience of what this branding exercise meant to them. And if that doesn't tell the audience what this has done to us internally, especially, then I don't know what will. But I think one of the most important things that I heard Tanya say was that this branding exercise not only sort of addressed the kind of work that we do, it actually that are doing the work. And that's, I think that's really, really powerful. So again, thank you to all the folks on the panel and to Kim and Tanya for really sharing some really, really impactful words about your own experiences. So you asked me where we are now and how this has changed the way that we do business. The whole process really changed us from the inside out. I think you just saw that. And in order to get where we landed, we had to really examine the soul of our organization. We had to affirm what was really important to us and what our values were. And that work served to strengthen our community by acknowledging that we're all here for the same purpose. And again, Tanya said it beautifully. She's training new people that are coming to the organization, and maybe we have a predisposition to attract people that are invested in the same kind of things that our values are telling us we're invested in. It went a really long way in creating a common ground for all of us to work from. And through the focus groups that we held at the very beginning of this process, and our core values pretty much declared themselves. We've always been a people-driven, people-focused organization, but this brought us to a much deeper understanding of who we are and what motivates us, both as individuals and as part of a larger whole. It changed our language that we use with each other and our messaging, both internally and externally. You've heard some of us use our core values in the words that we're using today to describe our work. I knew we really had made it when I was sitting with my senior leadership team one day, and one of my executive leaders said, "We're all in," and it wasn't like she was doing it like to be, she pulled it out of the core values. It actually came so naturally in her conversation, like, we're in, we're going to do this. Our brand position and how it is embedded within the medical schools brand has also helped us not only to frame and articulate the value that we provide to our customers, but it also frames how we fit together with the rest of the school towards the end of making the healthcare experience better for all. We're super proud of this work. I don't think I could say that enough. And as we've all said, I think it really does show what we stand for. I also think it's important to say that as I answer this question of where are we now, that this is by no means an end for us. It's really just the beginning of a very meaningful journey that we're all on to serve our mission.
Yes, Lisa, the brand launch was just the beginning of this next chapter. And certainly, as Tanya pointed out, the name 4Health came about organically, and it wasn't, of course, in and of itself, it was a big deal, but it wasn't the big reveal. The big reveal was that now we have a way to more effectively present and talk about who we are, what we do, and why it matters. So I'd love to just hear from you one more question, Lisa, if you're up for it. What do you think that we need to keep doing to ensure brand sustainability and to continue to build the sense of belonging in our operations and our strategic plan initiatives?
Yeah, that's also a great question. Like I just said, we're really just at the beginning. We need to keep doing exactly what we're doing and more of it. Our brand implementation has had an overwhelmingly positive impact on our organization thus far. And maybe the most important impact has been sort of the conversations that are happening amongst our employees and the connection that we all have to one another through the work that we've done so far. And the work that we've done this far has served a very practical purpose of clarifying who we are and what we do. And it gave us a language to talk about all of that, both internally and externally. But maybe more importantly, it served an important role in our strategy. And it's not just that it will support our ongoing growth and sustainability. That's where it begins. It served the pillar that focuses on our people, because we have 3 pillars in our strategic plan, right? There's the growth pillar that we've been talking about, which is really what drove, the brand identity work. But in doing that, like in doing the work, the other pillars have been well served. We have a pillar focused on our people, and that's our DEIB, the diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging pillar. And we've started a wave of connecting our community from the inside out and continue to strive to engage our team members in as many different ways as we possibly can to inform our work that we do and to inform our strategy. This is what's going to create a sustainable future for us. We're building trust and providing an opportunity for our people and our partners to share input and invest, and which are ultimately the components of building an inclusive culture and a sense of belonging. So I really think we're off to a really good start. We continue to grow our internal engagement programs, which we implemented during the brand process. And you've heard a little bit about some of those programs. Those programs were intended to connect our work with our people, because that's the only way this is really going to be sustainable. For example, the brand ambassadors in our brand ambassador program that you heard about earlier from Kim and others, those brand ambassadors were all invited to apply to serve as employee advisors. And this program is a part of our DEIB strategy for this year. And it's intended to give our employees at large, because we have a lot of them, we have like 1,100 of them across the organization, and making sure that we have those voices lifting up to the top of the organization can be challenging. So we developed this program to give these people empowerment to carry those messages and bring that voice into the implementation of our strategic plan initiatives. Our brand ambassadors carry those voices really well, and they inform all of the planning and the implementation activities that are part of our strategic plan implementation. And right now we have 40 brand ambassadors, and 5 of those people were selected to serve in this role as this new role of employee advisors. And that includes Kim Cristoforo, who is one of our panelists today. It's a great next step to cultivating a sense of belonging by creating new ways to get involved, by sharing our skills and our experiences to advance our brand together. I look forward to the development of more initiatives like this, and I truly think that the steps that we've taken thus far, in collaboration with our team and the organization, are going to lead the way for us.
Thanks so much, Lisa. And before I open, I have just a couple of questions that have popped in. So if you have any additional questions or comments or feedback or perspectives, please enter them into the chat. We have about 10 more minutes here to really engage in some dialogue. But I want to thank our panel today and my colleagues for creating the space for this discussion today, and for approaching it so intentionally and so thoughtfully, given all of the other work that you are doing on a day-to-day basis. I'm going to go to the first question that I have here. And Jorge, maybe I'm going to direct this to you, because I think this also speaks to our non-4Health community that is here represented today. What other ways might we as individuals, or from our own organizational perspective, create a stronger sense of belonging in the working or learning environment?
Well, thanks, Katie, and another quick thank you to the panelists with really powerful stories. I think this is, a challenge for many of us. I will say again, in particular for 4Health, I mentioned early on, being in a remote environment, there is, particular intention that's required to create some of these spaces. But for those that are working in other departments and other places, our focus really is on, how are we establishing a space and time to be intentional about how we're meeting and connecting with one another. Some folks are taking team building exercises. They're volunteering in different ways as teams and collective to build a sense of connection. Others are more intentional about team building exercises during the course of meetings, setting aside time in those formatted sessions. So it doesn't necessarily mean we have to build anew. I think it really is about shifting our thinking about how we leverage the time we have together, and embedding these conversations and time to connect in different ways. Many of you have heard about our initiatives through the Diversity Inclusion Office around restorative justice, which really is a real focus on community building. Again, with intention, that we've got set aside time and a real framework for how we start thinking about better ways to learn from each other, stay connected, build that trust that's really required to create that sense of belonging. So I think there are, they don't have to be large programs, but some of these small initiatives will help to continue to build that space and those interrelationships in a meaningful way that start to, elevate those collaborations and partnerships and really feeling connected to the work and each other.
Thanks, Jorge. As a follow-up question, because I see that this question sort of ticks and ties together, what suggestions do you have for different types of employees, leaders, students that they might be able to, that we might be able to learn from and figure out some ways to really advance that sense of belonging with those colleagues and the peers and teams?
I think if we just take it to zero, right, Katie? I
Mhm.
mean, that we model inclusive, respectful, civil engagement with one another. I mean, that sort of feels like it's not difficult to be kind, in terms of being open, sharing our own stories, creating those spaces and being open to hearing the diverse perspectives and stories of individuals and at all levels. I think a part of this too is, acknowledging how we show up to work. Some of us who are in different levels of the organization, again, from leadership to management to staff, that it's a critical component of this is really coming to this with this sort of building relationships and community building in terms of being curious about one another, coming at this, being humble in terms of what we know and what we don't know about one another and assumptions, and really creating those spaces to ask those questions. And when we feel that safety, and as we mentioned early on, feeling respected and valued, that it does create that space where we feel we can come to work authentically, and that it's not performative, that this is real stuff. We're real people doing real work, impacting real lives. And that when we come together and feel like we're connected to that work, as we've done through this rebranding, I think, the communities we serve and our mission is well served, as Lisa mentioned.
Thanks, Jorge. And I know that the DIO is a resource and a support for helping all of us think through this work in a very intentional and actionable way. So that's my plug for you in the DIO.
We appreciate it.
I do have one question here that I'm going to ask, Kim, Tanya, and maybe Carla to weigh in on, is that, how did we create different opportunities for employees to learn and engage in this, given that not everybody wants to be a brand ambassador, or not everybody is going to want to, apply to become a frontline employee advisor? Carla, do you want to start?
Yes. Thank you for that question. I think really the answer is to have multiple forums for communication and internal dialogue, so that employees can find the best fit, for them, but really that those channels are open, for them and available, and that they know about them. So I think the brand ambassador program is, one way that employees can certainly get involved with our brand and our organization. Employee advisor program that Lisa mentioned is another avenue. We also have innovation stations across our organization in every single business unit that are led by innovation station ambassadors. Those are also employee roles. And then we also have, our intranet, which we use for internal communication purposes, and championing one another's work, giving feedback and sharing kudos and shout outs for, success and collaboration as well. So I think it's really just having a mix of different channels that are available to employees so that everyone can find the best fit for them.
Thanks, Carla. And I just as an add-on question for Tanya and Kim, as brand ambassadors, what did you find as the most effective ways to share information with your team members and what was most received, least received, you know, through those different mechanisms.
Sure, I can go, Katie. Yeah, I think the brand ambassador program, it really encouraged some relationship building through activities like core message feedback sessions where leadership and team members were, you know, like able to talk about what we do, kind of helping to bridge that gap and foster a sense of belonging for everyone in our community. And then also kind of sharing out the brand toolkit, knowledge sharing and onboarding processes, you know, help enable brand ambassadors and all employees with a connectedness to our new brand, and really provides the availability to communicate who we are.
Thanks, Tanya.
Sure, yeah, and like Tim said, those tools, the internet and the resources that are available there, just having meetings and conversations with each other, introducing the new name. Something that our unit values is things like the town halls as a way to be connected to what's going on at other levels of the organization. And just through emails, and Carla was mentioning those multiple avenues by which people can feel connected. And it's not necessarily going to be every staff person who signs up to be an ambassador or in a role like that. However, having representation within each group. So in my unit, people know if they have certain questions about the brand or need resources, that I'm likely someone who's going to have that information for them. So just knowing who to reach out to is really valuable, and that has a way of being escalated if it needs to be. And yeah, people feel connected on a personal level.
And important, you know, since so much of our workforce is a remote workforce, that, you know, the ability to pop your head into your neighbor's cube, or see that somebody in the bathroom, which, you know, pings you to remind you to have another conversation, doesn't happen organically and naturally. So it's, you know, those are all really good ways to be thinking even just about how we engage and create belonging with one another in such a remote work environment. We are almost at time here. I see that. Thank you so much for the wonderful questions and the engagement here. I'd like to turn it back to Jorge to close us out and close the session out.
Yeah, well, again, thank you all so much. I think it's telling the popularity, or in terms of registration here, really how meaningful and how hungry folks are in thinking about innovative ways to create this sense of belonging within your teams and in your organization. So we really appreciate it. Thank you to the panelists for your powerful and meaningful stories and experiences. We hope that this has, you know, sparked some ideas in terms of inspiring you to think about different ways and this sort of multifaceted approach towards engaging your community, your teams, your collaborators and partners, and helping to create that sense of belonging. So, you know, the journey's not always easy, but, you know, with intention and partnership and creative thinking, you know, there are different ways that we can sort of help achieve and advance this work moving forward. So I'm going to thank you all again. I'll ask that you all will be receiving an evaluation probably sometime tomorrow. We ask that you just take a couple of minutes to respond and give us your feedback in terms of today's session and any ideas for future sessions. So thank you so much. Thank you for joining the Diversity Summit this year. We're very excited with the outcome and look forward to more opportunities to come together and moving this work together. Have a great day, everyone.